All right, so get ready because today we're going to be diving deep into all this stuff about AI and the future of the internet. We've got a whole stack of articles, and
Yeah.
most of them are about Cloudflare, and specifically a lot of what Matthew Prince, the CEO of Cloudflare, has been saying about all
Oh,
this.
yeah, Cloudflare. I mean, it's interesting, right? They started out as like the CDN for the masses, but now they're really a major player in the whole internet infrastructure game.
Yeah, they're everywhere, and Prince has been talking about all this stuff like how AI is going to change network design and this whole idea of a connectivity cloud, which sounds kind of wild. And then like this question of how do you regulate a balkanized internet? I
Yeah.
mean, is the internet even going to be the internet as we know it in like 5 years?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. And I think one of the things that Prince keeps coming back to is this double whammy almost of how AI is going to influence things. So like on the one hand, AI is being used to design and improve the actual infrastructure of the internet.
Oh,
So it's almost like AI is getting self-aware and building its own house or something.
yeah.
But then the other part is this big shift that's happening from AI training, which is mostly happening in those giant data centers,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
to AI inference, which is increasingly happening out on devices at the edge of the network.
So that's
Yeah.
like my phone or my car. They're doing the AI stuff right there.
Right, exactly. All these devices are becoming these like little AI brains.
It's kind of creepy when you think about it.
Yeah.
But Prince makes this really interesting comparison. He says that AI needs to be localized just like a Big Mac.
Okay.
So just like you wouldn't expect a beef Big Mac to be a hit in India, you can't assume that the same AI model is going to work perfectly everywhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's all about cultural differences, right? Different norms, different expectations.
Yeah.
And then you've got these wildly different regulations around data privacy and how AI can be used. All that has to be baked into the AI somehow.
So can we just, for those of us who aren't, like total tech wizards, can you break down like what is the difference between AI training and inference?
Sure, yeah. It's actually pretty straightforward. So think of it like you're teaching your dog a new trick. Like the training phase is when you're showing the dog what to do, you're rewarding good behavior, you're correcting mistakes. That's kind of like how we train AI models on these huge data sets so they learn to spot patterns and predict outcomes. Inference, on the other hand, is when the dog actually performs the trick on command. So it's like when a trained AI model uses its knowledge to make sense of new information and react accordingly.
Okay, so that actually makes a lot of sense. It's like training is learning and inference is doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we've got these AI models running everywhere, getting smarter all the time. But there's a problem.
Oh yeah, there's always a problem.
Even with super fast networks, we still have this thing called latency.
Uh-huh.
It's that little delay between when you ask for something online and when you actually get it back.
Right, and with AI, where we need like split-second decisions,
Yeah.
especially for things like self-driving cars or real-time translation, latency can be a total deal breaker.
Yeah. And so this is where Cloudflare comes in. With this whole connectivity cloud idea, Prince sees Cloudflare as like this third place. It's not your device, it's not the giant cloud,
Yeah.
but it's like a smart layer in between that kind of bridges that gap.
It's kind of like a middleman,
Yeah.
but a really smart middleman.
Yeah, and they're not messing around. Prince says that they've been putting GPUs like everywhere.
Oh, wow.
Those are those powerful chips that are really good at AI
Right?
to handle this like surge in AI inference at the edge of the network.
Well, it's interesting because this whole move towards edge computing, it really forces us to kind of rethink the internet's basic plumbing, all
Yeah.
the routers and switches and all that behind the scenes stuff. It might need a serious upgrade to handle all the demands of AI.
So it's like the digital highways that we built for yesterday's internet. They're not going to be big enough for the data tsunami that's coming our way.
Exactly. And I think you remember that huge surge in internet traffic we saw during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Prince calls that a dress rehearsal for this AI-powered future. It exposed some weaknesses for sure,
Yeah.
but it also showed just how incredibly resilient the internet actually is.
So we've got this increasingly intelligent and interconnected internet, which is amazing. But like anything powerful, there's a flip side, right?
Oh yeah, there's always a flip side.
Prince talks about the growing problem of misinformation and disinformation and cybercrime in this age of AI. So how is Cloudflare, a company that's known for security, how are they navigating all this?
Well, their strategy is kind of multi-layered.
Yeah.
So they start by blocking content that's straight up illegal,
Mm.
based on the laws of whatever country it's being accessed in.
Right.
Which sounds simple enough, but it gets tricky really fast.
Yeah, because there's that tension between what's technically legal and what's morally right. Like, Prince brings up their decision to cut off services for websites like the Daily Stormer and 8chan. I mean, those sites were legally operating. but the content was just awful, and it was fueling real-world harm.
Right, and that's a classic example of how tech companies are now being forced to make these judgment calls about content moderation. Where do you draw the line?
It's tough, and then it gets even more complicated when you consider that the internet is global. But regulations are this patchwork from country to country. Like Prince talks about China's ICP license system.
Okay.
It's super strict, but at least it's clear. If you want to operate online in China, you play by their rules, period.
Right, it's a stark contrast to the more open internet that we're used to in a lot of other parts of the world.
Yeah.
But it really highlights this tension between national control and the borderless nature of the digital world.
And you can see this tension playing out in some legal battles. Prince mentions a German court ruling that basically said a DNS provider should block a specific website worldwide, not just within Germany.
Wow. So one country is trying to dictate what content is accessible for everyone.
Right.
That raises a lot of questions about freedom of speech and the free flow of information.
Yeah, and what happens if that becomes the norm?
It's kind of scary when you think about it.
Yeah.
Like, who gets to decide what we can and can't see online?
Yeah, it's a tough one. But in the middle of all this talk about regulations and content moderation, Cloudflare is also doing some pretty cool stuff to actually make the internet a better place. Remember that 1.1.1.1 graffiti you've probably seen around? That's actually Cloudflare's public DNS resolver, and it's kind of a core part of their vision for a better internet.
Yeah. For those who might not know, a DNS resolver is basically like the internet's phone book. Translates those human-readable website names like google.com into those numerical IP addresses that computers actually use to talk to each other.
Right, so it's like behind the scenes, but super important.
Exactly. And Cloudflare's 1.1.1.1 resolver is all about making that translation faster, more private, and more secure. So it doesn't keep logs of your browsing activity. And it helps protect you from malicious websites.
So it's like they're using their tech to actually improve everyone's daily online experience.
Right, and it all ties back to Prince's vision of a connectivity cloud. That makes moving data around fast, reliable, secure, efficient, and private.
And Prince mentions that there are still a crazy number of people who aren't even online yet, 4 billion people.
Wow.
Yeah. And he sees that as this huge opportunity.
I mean, can you imagine the potential if we could bring all those people online, the access to information, education, economic opportunities, it would be transformative.
Yeah, it's a really ambitious goal, but it shows how Cloudflare is thinking about the future. But then Prince ends on this kind of sobering note. Yeah, he points out that a lot of countries, after opening up to the internet, are kind of having second thoughts.
Yeah, makes sense.
They're realizing just how powerful the internet is and how it can disrupt traditional power structures.
And the social norm.
Yeah, and some countries are starting to crack down, trying to control what their citizens can see and do online.
So more censorship and surveillance.
Exactly. And Prince uses Russia and Iran as examples, where the governments are actively trying to build what he calls the Great Firewall 2.0.
Oh, wow.
Basically, they're trying to create a parallel internet that they can tightly control, blocking anything they deem undesirable.
It sounds like something out of a dystopian sci-fi novel.
Yeah, and Cloudflare, because they're this global company with a commitment to an open internet, they're kind of right in the middle of this struggle.
Oh, bet.
Yeah, and it's actually gotten pretty personal for Prince. He's been sanctioned by the Russian government because Cloudflare has made it difficult for them to block certain content without also blocking access to essential services like banking or online shopping.
So they can't really shut off the internet entirely without hurting themselves. It's a tough situation.
Yeah, and it all goes back to that question of internet balkanization that we were talking about earlier. Are we headed for a future where the internet splinters into a bunch of national internets, each with their own rules and restrictions?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it's a nice idea to have this one big interconnected internet where information flows freely.
Right.
But the internet exists in a world of different countries with different values, laws, priorities, and sometimes those values clash. Like, what one country considers acceptable online might be totally off limits in another. So how do you reconcile those differences without sacrificing the whole idea of an open internet?
It's a tricky balancing act.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to solve a giant puzzle where the pieces don't quite fit together.
So do you think there's a solution?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
No.
I don't think Prince offers any easy answers.
Yeah.
But he really stresses the importance of open dialogue and collaboration, and a willingness to find some kind of middle ground.
So it sounds like he's advocating for what we might call digital diplomacy, where countries actually work together to set norms and standards for the internet, kind of like we've done with things like international trade or air travel.
Right. It's recognizing that the internet is this shared resource, this global commons, that needs cooperation and compromise to really function properly.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. From the technical details of AI and networks to these bigger philosophical questions about internet governance and the future of information itself. What do you see as like the most important takeaway from all of this?
I think for me, it's the realization that we're at a crossroads. The internet, as we know it, is changing rapidly. AI is impacting how we use it, how it's designed, even how we think about it. And this evolution is bringing up some really big questions about governance regulation and the balance between national interests and global connectivity.
It's like we're stepping into this new era of the internet, and the rules are still being written.
Exactly. And it's up to all of us, governments, tech companies, individuals, to shape this future in a way that benefits everyone.
Well said. So let's bring this back to you, our listener. How does all of this affect your life, your work, your relationship with the internet?
I think the key is to be aware. The internet isn't this static, unchanging thing. It's dynamic, always in flux, shaped by technology, politics, and the choices we make every day.
So stay informed, stay engaged, and don't be afraid to ask questions. The future of the internet is in many ways still up for grabs, which is both exciting and a little bit daunting.
I'd say that's a pretty good summary. It really does feel like we're in this kind of Wild West phase of the AI-powered internet. Huge potential, but also some major risks.
It's almost like we need a whole new skill set to navigate this digital landscape.
Yeah.
We can't just blindly trust everything we see online anymore. We need to be like smart, discerning information consumers.
Absolutely. And that means understanding the biases that are built into the algorithms that are curating our online experience, our social media feeds, our search results, even the ads we see. It's all shaped by AI that's designed to keep us glued to our screens, often at the expense of accuracy or a balanced perspective.
So we're essentially trapped in these personalized filter bubbles, only seeing things that reinforce our existing beliefs. How do we break free from that?
Well, it takes conscious effort. You have to actively seek out diverse sources of information, challenge your own assumptions, and be willing to engage with viewpoints that differ from your own. It might be uncomfortable, but it's crucial for developing a deeper understanding of the world.
It's like we need to become digital explorers, venturing outside our comfort zones and seeking out new perspectives. What do you think are the most essential tools for navigating this internet of the future?
I think curiosity is key, for sure. You got to be open-minded and willing to learn, and also a healthy dose of skepticism. I mean, with all these deep fakes and AI-generated content floating around, it's getting harder and harder to tell what's real and what's fake.
Yeah, you're right. It's like we need a whole new set of tools to even navigate this digital world. It's not enough to just sit back and consume information anymore. We have to be critical thinkers and savvy media consumers.
Exactly. And that means being aware of the biases that are baked into these algorithms, the ones that are shaping what we see online. Social media feeds search results, even the ads we encounter. It's all driven by these AI systems that are designed to grab our attention, but often that comes at the cost of accuracy or a balanced perspective.
Yeah, it's almost like we're living in these personalized echo chambers. We're just exposed to information that reinforces what we already believe. So how do we break out of that?
Well, it takes effort. You have to actively seek out diverse sources of information. You got to challenge your own assumptions and be willing to engage with viewpoints that make you uncomfortable. I know it's not always easy, but it's crucial if you want to develop a more nuanced understanding of the world.
It's like we need to become digital explorers, venturing outside our comfort zones to discover new perspectives.
Well, this whole deep dive has been quite a journey, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
We've gone from the nitty-gritty of AI and network design to these really big questions about how the internet is governed and what the future of information even looks like. Yeah, it really highlights how complex and interconnected the internet is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just some technology over there. It really reflects who we are as a society, our values, our conflicts, our dreams for the future.
And as we move deeper into this age of AI, the internet is only going to become more intertwined with our lives, with our work, even with our sense of self.
Which is why it's so important to have these conversations, to think critically about the impact of these technologies, and to demand that they are developed and used in a way that benefits humanity, not the other way around.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the future of the internet, we want to leave you with this thought. Can we create an internet that is both globally connected and respectful of diverse values and regulations? Or are we heading towards a more fractured and controlled online world? We don't have all the answers, but we hope this conversation has given you some food for thought, and maybe some of the tools you need to navigate these questions as they continue to evolve. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the future of the internet.